This
has
All
been
right, here we go.
Entrepreneur. Hey, everybody. Hey, Blue Collar Millionaires. We got a really special guest today, Fraser Bayley. He's a friend of mine. He's also my personal trainer. I've been working with him for 6-7 weeks now, having incredible results. He's also a member of the DM Alliance, the Dealmaker Alliance. Chris is a member of that. I'm in the Dealmaker family, so we have a lot of common friends, and everybody in that group is just really motivated. Fraser, thanks for coming on.
It's a pleasure, man. I'm excited to dig into all the stuff relating to health, fitness, ROIs, tying back to business. I mean, guys, like, you hit me with any questions that you want. I'm an open book, and I want to leave, the group with as many nuggets and tangible things as possible with this discussion.
Absolutely.
Before we get started, Fraser's out in the mountains in Gatlinburg. He's building a house out there, so he's on a kind of a quirky Wi-Fi right now because I see his face freezing up. But we can still hear him. We're going to still go and do the best we can.
Absolutely.
Fraser, talk about. Let's just get to it. Like, I'm such a big believer in. I know Chris is in really good shape. He's working out. I know guys who work out and then they do well in business. It goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
It gives you energy. You're so much more likely. I know people say, I know this guy who makes this much money and he's 80 pounds overweight. You don't know many of them.
Yeah. And I often say to people, imagine how much better they could be.
I know.
So like, they might be tapping into some potential even, in their current health. Imagine how much more untapped potential that individual has if they were to actualize some of that, those ROIs. And we can dig into all that stuff, but a lot of people don't realize that, fat loss and having abs, that's just one part of it. I mean, like, how you produce your ability to concentrate your energy levels through the day, whether you get teens. Are you there, guys?
Yep, we can hear you now. No, we can't.
We lost you there, Fraser.
Are you there, guys? Sorry, I'm losing you here. I'm breaking up.
Yeah, are you on your phone Wi-Fi this time? Your hotspot?
I might just jump straight on my phone, just because
I'm
connected. Yeah, I'll go. I'll jump off and I'll jump on my phone. Give me a second.
Okay.
Cool.
So while he's doing that, so what I've been impressed, Kevin, about Fraser is the fact that he understands so much the physical efforts that are required in business, not only physically, but mentally. And his program really does make it simplistic. It didn't add a whole nother thing to have to think about and think through. So the program that he put together for the DM Alliance, and we all did for 60 days right before Mark's birthday bash, it was simplistic enough so that anybody could follow it, and it was powerful enough so that everybody got results. And it was even down to him simplifying what you ate. And it was like, have you a protein, have you a healthy starch, and then get you the rainbow and vegetables. Yes. And bell peppers were one of that. That simplified it in such a manner that I was okay to follow that, because I've heard, eating macros and counting calories and all this other stuff. And it just made it very difficult. Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, crystal clear picture. Is that better? That's the way to go.
Dude, I was trying to do it on my computer, but obviously that was not going to happen today. So I am back, gentlemen. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So I was just telling Kevin how you simplify things so on a third grade level for someone. And now I don't know the program that's going with Kevin, because Kevin has got your coaching program going, but you had did a thing for the DM Alliance. And I was just telling him how I was able to take your explanation of how to eat healthy, which was protein, healthy starch, and eat the rainbow with it and vegetables. And I was able to run with that, and it totally changed my life and made me feel a lot better about eating healthy, and I was able to identify what was good and what wasn't. So can you kind of give us a breakdown and simplify it? Because all these entrepreneurs are extremely busy.
Yeah.
And they say, dude, I'm not going to sit here and go to the grocery store and count these calories and all this other stuff. I'm not going to do it when I run to the restaurant. So how can they simplify that process and say, I am going to eat better by doing this one method?
Yeah. And this is really important, Chris, what you just touched on about, how busy we all are. The average fitness person who does this for a living, they have time to do all that stuff, fart around, meal prep, count things, weigh things. I've just found for the guys that I work with, it's just out of the equation. It's never going to be sustainable. I haven't counted calories or macros in over 10 years. And so a lot of what I'm going to share with you is literally through my own experience. And so typically, like you were saying, Chris, when you're looking at a meal, you're thinking to yourself, like, where's my protein, right? Where's my lean protein? Where's my starchy carbohydrate? If you're going to incorporate that, where's my whole food fat? And we can talk about what those look like in a second. And then, like you said, the rainbow concept. And so the rainbow concept, it was essentially, whether it would be a salad or stir fry, fibrous vegetables, where's my green? Where's my red? Where's my orange? Where's my yellow? You don't always get all of those, at once, but as much as you can, shoot for the rainbow. And so if you stack a lean protein with a starchy carbohydrate, like, some type of grain, rice, potato, that type of thing, and then you do a whole food fat, like avocado, something like that, and then you have your stir fry or salad with the rainbow, you can literally use that model anywhere. And so you could be at a restaurant, you could be traveling, you could be at home, and you can adjust your portions visually. And so one of the things that I've talked to Kevin about, and is even just using like a visual cue, like your palm size. So like if you were to look at the circumference of your palm and the width, that would be like maybe one serving. And so you could say, okay, I'm going to do one serving visually. And so this enables you to be out traveling and literally kind of visually look at something and know if it's within striking distance of what you want to achieve. So I find, obviously there's more to it than that, but I find that sort of generalistic visualization of how to interpret your meals is often the missing piece for most people. Most people, they get up in the numbers, they get all up in their head. And I think, as business guys, a lot of these people probably watching this are all about numbers, right? Like, investing, real estate is all about numbers. Yet when it comes to fitness and health, sometimes in certain areas, the numbers can actually be a roadblock. All the data and all the numbers, it can actually block you from just doing the simple fundamental things well. Now, I will say there is a time for data. There's a time for numbers. And so if you were to get your blood work done and assess your blood work, you want to look at those numbers. You want to know what's happening chemically in your body. So then you can actually adjust your diet, adjust the foods you consume, adjust your supplementation based off those numbers. But once you get to the eating aspect of things, eating more intuitively is a way more user-friendly process. And I really encourage a lot of guys to follow a model like this, because it allows you to thrive in any environment. You could be at like DM Live, we could be at any mastermind event, we could be traveling anywhere, and we have a bearing on what we should be doing. Whereas a lot of guys will, be in this sort of bubble environment when they're at home and they have their meal prep or whatever. And as soon as they leave that environment, everything kind of unravels. And you see that very often. I see that all the time. So definitely these models and these modalities have come out of a need to make sure that someone can bulletproof their routine no matter what environment that they're in.
So can you give us 2 examples of each of those groups to make up a healthy meal?
Yeah. So obviously, when it comes to lean protein, it depends on, your preference. Me being plant-based, I'll do something like tempeh or lentils. You could do something like turkey, chicken, fish. I definitely say, go more on the fish, salmon, things like that. I would say in terms of starches, it's going to be either like sweet potato or gold potato. Or some type of, microwave rice blend. You get these rice packs, right? So you can get grain blends, rices. So you could do something like that. And then for whole food fats, it would probably be something along the lines of your avocado, or it's like hummus or something like that. And that can actually almost double as a condiment. So you could use guacamole or hummus to almost flavor the meal as well. So you're not drowning it with sauces and condiments, which again is another reason why a lot of people spill over, because they'll have a salad and they drown it in something and it pushes their calorie intake through the roof. And they're like, well, I'm eating a salad. Why is nothing happening? Well, you just added like 500 calories of condiments. And so there's that aspect of the equation. And then when it comes to your fibrous vegetables, like Chris, you were saying the rainbow, just think in terms of either salads, stir fries, or oven roasted vegetables. It's going to be one of those things. So, salad would be, your dark leafy greens, tomatoes or red peppers, carrots. Your stir fry might be broccoli, beets, carrots. Your oven roasted vegetables will be similar. And so if you stack 50% of your plate as fibrous colored vegetables, and then 25 or even 30% of that as protein, and then the remainder as carbohydrates, and then the fat is like the condiment, the flavoring, guys, you have a recipe for success right there. And coming back to one of the things that I think is really important when you're thinking about health relating to investing in business and stuff, is that I found that the more I've eaten this way over the years, because quick frame of reference, I was diagnosed with ADHD. I was diagnosed with learning disabilities, bipolar disorder, all kinds of things. And I was heavily medicated for over 10 years. And now I've been medication free for 12 years. And I am sharing this with you because I truly have seen the power of nutrition and how it actually drives cognitive changes, like your brain. And so if you want to have more clarity of thought, if you want to have more energy, if you want to think more sharply, have better memory, like what you put in your body will literally potentially either engineer that or move you away from that. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent of sharing this stuff, because I'm like you guys were saying at first, you can be 80 pounds overweight and still be financially successful. But imagine how much better you could be. And also how much more bandwidth could you have? Like, you're putting all this time and energy into your work, but do you have any space and energy left for your family after that? Most of the time, the answer is probably no. And so my whole thing is like, how do you create bandwidth? If you can create bandwidth, man, you can allocate that to like any venture you want, family, other business ideas, videos, collaborations, marketing, and everything just explodes from there,
Yeah, I find I find everything Fraser's giving me as sustainable.
Yeah.
So I'm on this kick I'm turning 50 in just over a month. Actually, in a month. I think it's 30 days. So I'm going to just keep going with this. But that's always the problem with these things, from 75 hard to like, I'm only eating vegetables, and, it works for like 3 weeks. And then they end up gaining more weight. They don't do it. You have to be sustainable. So everything we're doing, from the workouts, I even find the workouts, I was spending too much time. Like, we're doing all these rest pauses, and we're getting it superset. I love that stuff too.
Yeah.
But I get more results in shorter period of time. Like, just turn up the intensity. Everybody knows that, but sometimes we're like, nah, we're gonna do the 90-minute one.
Yeah.
You could have did it in 40. It's the same as running your business. Like, get to the stuff that matters. Figure out what those things are, and then just do them every day, and you get massive results.
And I think that comes back to that efficiency standpoint. I think one of the reasons why people struggle to either get in shape, or they get in shape and they really struggle to maintain it, is because the processes by which they implemented to get there were very inefficient. And so they were doing 2-hour workouts or 60 minutes of cardio every day. They're just in a starvation diet. Their whole diet was just nothing but like shake replacement systems. And so eventually they get to the point where they'll, you can't sustain that long term. And so part of what I like to do is focus on this minimum effective dose approach, where what is the most potent thing? What's the thing that will, what's one thing that will solve 5 problems? Yeah. And I mean, Kevin, you've heard me talk about this. Like, what's one thing that will solve 5 problems? And if you nail down lever 1, lever 2, lever 3, and lever 4, and you're pulling those levers, and each lever is solving 5 problems, you can pull 4 levers and you solve 20 problems.
I love
that. That's how you leverage your, and you guys can probably see all the analogies when it comes back to business, right? Kevin, you were talking about getting VAs to come in and clip these videos down and stuff. Like, that's an example of like pulling one lever to leverage multiple things. The same thing rings true for, fitness and nutrition and stuff like that. And I've even found that in my own experience, like with my online consulting, like as that's growing, I've learned to titrate down and simplify things, and which levers are the ones I need to be pulling to get the person the best results. So a lot of the stuff that I'm sharing with you, Kevin, or Chris, the stuff that you've seen through the DM Alliance, that's literally from years and years of consulting in this space and seeing what is just fluff and what is just noise and to-dos that are just on a checklist to make you feel good versus what are actually things that are going to move the needle in the right direction for you. And so very often, I'll tell people, hey, you need to do less. And they don't understand. They're like, less? Like, I'm meant to be getting to the goal. And I'm like, no, but we're more intentional. Like you said, we go in with more intensity. We go in with more of like a laser beam focus. And it's like having a stick of dynamite. And rather than just tapping on it with a pencil, you take a sledgehammer to it and boom, and explode. So like, you got to have that mentality when it comes to this type of stuff as well.
So I want you to touch on blood work because, there was a time where I went in, I just had about a 7 to 10 day where I was just really sick feeling, just depleted. Didn't really know what was going on. They couldn't identify it. Finally, one of the doctors pulled blood work of more of a panel. And then he was telling me how my testosterone was low. And I was able to I didn't have to get into testosterone therapy. I was able to do something else, and it brought me back up to good levels, and it's thankfully been sustainable without any extra effort. But I think a lot of people walk around with inefficiencies in their blood work and don't realize it, and that's why they struggle so hard. So can you just kind of explain that and do it gender neutral as well, in the sense of, I know I said testosterone for guys, but what is girls mainly missing?
Yeah, and this, I would say, is probably one of the most valuable, important pieces of the video that you'll hear, guys. So like, if you're listening in, tune in on this, because this is the thing that will move the needle in your life. One of the things that I found that is very useful is if you get your blood work done and you can see like an abnormality, like maybe something's too high, your LDL cholesterol is too high, or something is not right. You can actually change things in your diet and use over-the-counter supplementation and even change things in your lifestyle to optimize those numbers. And then as a byproduct of optimizing those numbers, you'll often see improvements in energy levels, improvements in sleep quality, improvements in libido, improvements in reduction in cravings, more mental clarity, all the things we talk about. So I would say some of the key things that are really important to know where you're at. The first one is going to probably be your C-reactive protein score. So your C-reactive protein on the panel, it'll say HS-CRP. So high sensitivity C-reactive protein. This is literally inflammation marker in your body of how likely you are to have a heart attack or stroke. And so especially, I mean, it pertains to women as well, but especially for guys in their 40s onwards, like, you need to know this number. And in my opinion, if that number is above 3, you're at serious risk of some type of cardiovascular event. And that could happen at any point. You could wake up in the morning and it could literally just happen. And I really emphasize people to get that checked, because you can have all the deals and have all the doors and do all the investments, but if you don't get that under control, what happens, when something kicks in? And so the cool thing about something like that is that's a marker that you have control over. Like, you can actually influence that positively with all kinds of things. It's not some genetic thing that you're just stuck with. So I would say the first thing is that. The other thing is your hemoglobin A1C and your fasting insulin. This is going to tell you how insulin resistant or pre-diabetic you are. One of the things I found as someone who's been very fascinated with human performance and optimization, not just physically, but like cognitively, is that if you experience brain fog or getting a lot of ADHD-like symptoms, inability to concentrate, that type of thing, in my experience, when I've looked at blood panels with my students who have said that they've gone to the doctor and the doctor said, well, you might have ADHD, they very often have insulin resistance. So their blood glucose is like a roller coaster. Say, for instance, you eat like a pack of Skittles or something. Your blood glucose is going to go up, 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 like you're going up a roller coaster. And then what happens when you get to the top? Like, you come down like a rocket. And it's that effect of like that up and down, which causes the brain fog, which causes the cravings, which causes like the energy peak and the energy trough. Now, there are ways you can literally manipulate your diet and supplementation to make sure that that is like a stable, flat line. The more stable and flat that line is, the more energy, balance, and concentration you have through the day. And then you can ask yourself, whatever you choose to do with that energy balance and concentration is completely up to you. And so I think that the second one is your hemoglobin A1C and fasting insulin, because beyond that, if you're insulin resistant, it'll be harder to lose body fat. And typically in the research, if you get to diabetes, you will literally take 10 to 20 years off your lifespan. 10 to 20 years. So that if the average American is, the average lifespan of the average American is 74 years old, this means that you might live to 54 or 64 years old if you have this, if this condition magnifies. Beyond that, I would say, like you said, Chris, some of the hormone stuff. So for women, it's going to be your progesterone, your estrogen, and your testosterone. You still want to get that sort of trifecta measured, because depending on where the woman is, and this can pertain for guys with the wives. Like if your wife, or, you know, for the ladies listening, if you're going through menopausal shifts, that can have massive impacts on your mood, your well-being, your sleep, everything. And so if you can understand what's happening with that, you can change your diet or supplementation to help balance those levels out. The same thing rings true for guys with testosterone. There's things you can do, like without having to go to the full end of the spectrum of, like, you know, hormone replacement therapy. There's many things you can do before that in terms of changing your diet, changing things within your routines. A simple example is like Brazil nuts. So Brazil nuts are high in selenium. Selenium is a mineral that helps with testosterone production. So there's foods like that everywhere, guys. And if you look at your diet like that, and when I'm piecing someone's diet together, I'll look at their blood work, and I'll then start to insert things in that I know will help improve each metric. And that transfers over to better ROIs, like not just with your physical body, like you get in shape much easier, but you obviously perform at a higher level as well. And then the last thing I would say that's a really important metric to get tested is your obviously your cholesterol, but there's a subcategory under your LDL. So your HDL is your good cholesterol, your LDL is your like bad one. But the one that you really want to get checked is your ApoB. So ApoB. It's called apolipoprotein protein B, and basically that's your small particle LDL. And imagine it's like sandpaper. So the small particles are like sandpaper rubbing on your arm. If you kept rubbing that sandpaper on your arm, eventually it's going to create like a wound. That's what's happening with your cardiovascular system internally if your ApoB is elevated. And so eventually that inflammation drives up your C-reactive protein level, and that's what opens the door for heart attacks and strokes. So my whole thing, guys, is like, I think getting in amazing shape is absolutely worth it for your branding, for your marketing, all that type of stuff. But when you do it the right way, it's a byproduct of you optimizing the internal stuff. And that's what I've sort of been showing Kevin. And I mean, Chris, you've seen this in the group where I talk about this, right? Where, you know, you do these things the right way. You not only optimize your energy and your production, but your body changing, your fat loss and your muscle building and all that stuff and longevity is literally just a byproduct of you doing that well, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, man.
Wow, that was a lot of stuff. But you know, the great thing so I got my blood tested on Inside Tracker.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at it and, you know, I was kind of like, what the hell is this? There's so many things. So I sent it over to Frazier. Frazier did like a 15-minute video. And my girlfriend, she used to be a nurse. I mean, she loved it. She was like, this guy, like, do it again. Because she like loved, just like Frazier knows his stuff. You know, she was like, I'm learning a lot of stuff off this. Do it again, run it again. So we watched the video again. But it was so good because that's like, you need some type of like scorecard. So I know we're going to do my blood again, and we're going to look at these issues. And Frazier did the same thing. He didn't overwhelm me like, oh my God, you got to do these 19 things today. He said, like, here's the 3 things we're doing. And then he's always adding them. So he's messaging me like every day. And then he says, hey, I'm going to send you this. Or, hey, I want you to go get this. And we just do it. And it's just very like day to day. I don't find it difficult at all. But I like it because I know I'm going to go back and my blood work's going to be better. Yeah, I'm looking better, feeling better, getting stronger, all that. I'll get to that in a second. But I need that scorecard. And yeah, I don't want anything that's, we found a couple things like, yeah, I need to address those things. I'm turning 50 years old, and it's crazy. That number could take 10 to 20 years off your life. Like, you need to know that number. You can't just sit in the dark and hope. But the biggest thing that Fraser has me on is just the quality of foods we're eating, and then just the system. And I have so much more energy. I was a guy who was just like eating protein bars, drinking Monsters, working all the time. I worked out and did everything, but I wasn't getting the results I want. And for me, Fraser, you know, when I would lift weights, in my past, I've been kind of, I don't know, maybe a little bit strong. And now what happens is I hit a wall and I can't get through that wall. But that's because I'm filling up my body with crap. You know, like, but when I'm starting eating these rainbow vegetables and stuff, like you see me on the dip, I just keep adding weight on there. Because your body's like, all right, this he's going all in here, and he's eating the right stuff.
I've got a good analogy. Like, dude, I freaking love that. And I've got a really good analogy for the viewers around, think of, first of all, I like this term, like a business athlete. You know, Kevin, I've talked to you about it before, like to be a business athlete, right? Like Ed Milet talks about it, where it's not just enough to kind of, you know, be a business amateur, to be a business athlete. But beyond that, I think of your body like a computer, right? Like your body's the Apple, Mac, iPad, or whatever. Your body's a computer. And the nutrition and the supplementation and things that you consume are like software or a program. And so on that computer, you know, you can inadvertently upload malware, like a virus, right? So like what happens when your computer gets malware? You know, it glitches, it crashes, it doesn't operate properly. It's nothing wrong with the computer per se, but it's something on the computer itself. The software is affecting the hardware's ability to operate. And so that's like when people are eating the Klondike bars and the freaking Snickers and the fried garbage all the time and all these things. That's like uploading the malware onto your system. And then you want to go on Excel and like pump out some spreadsheets for some deals. And you're like, oh, why does my computer keep crashing? Well, it keeps crashing because your software's crap. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, I like the rainbow concept, like whole foods. I tell people, keep it as simple as possible. Like, is the food one thing? Like one ingredient? Like brown rice is just brown rice. Broccoli is just broccoli. As much as you can, one food. And what I say to people is that when you do that, it's like uploading a good operating system update onto your computer. All of a sudden now that computer is functioning even better because the operating system update is actualizing the hardware potential. And so we're very similar in many ways. Obviously, we're much more complicated than a computer. We're like a supercomputer, but the principle remains the same. And so whenever I'm under a lot of pressure or I have a heavy workload, that's when I actually lean into these concepts more, because I'm like, I can't afford to be eating fast food and snacking on garbage, because if I have to produce a lot of stuff, that malware is really going to affect my ability to produce. And then that reduction of bandwidth affects my patience with my family, with my daughter. Like I'm an absent parent and husband. Like all these things cascade everywhere. And so, you know, again, I really emphasize that it's more than just abs. It's more than just fat loss. This really ties into everything. So Kevin, I just wanted to say, you know, like what you were saying about increasing in strength and not hitting that wall, that's like literally a byproduct of the software being an operating system update versus malware.
I love that, man. That analogy was great. We got a couple of questions coming in. One was, my blood pressure runs a little high. What's some tips to help with this?
Yeah, so I think, you know, a couple of things with this. You know, part of it, cliche, is like stress management. But some of the things I found to be useful are things that help stimulate nitric oxide production. So beets, you know, beet juice powder, whole beets. What I would be doing is adding beets in for one meal every day, or some type of beet juice powder. Foods that are high in arginine, or alternatively, you could just use an arginine supplement if you wanted. Oddly enough, what I've noticed for people who typically run a little bit high is if you get a little bit of extra movement in through the day, I call it like movement snacks, where let's say you have a Peloton bike at home and you're working from home, every hour, jump on the bike for 2 or 3 minutes and just pump the legs. It doesn't have to be anything intense. Little things like that accumulate, and it seems to bring that nervous system stress down and kind of normalize that blood pressure. I would also say beyond that, making sure that your sodium and potassium ratio is good. So like a lot of people, part of the reason you probably heard before, like too much salt, too much sodium, drive up blood pressure. It's yes and no, that's true. It's true in the sense that sodium can do that, but usually what it's representative of is you don't have enough potassium in your system to offset the sodium. And so what you want to be doing is, first of all, reducing down the foods that are really high in sodium, because that will drive it up. And the second thing is making sure that you consume more potassium rich foods. Bananas are a good example of that. And so you might add in potassium rich foods and bring down some of the processed foods high in sodium. And that in turn should help with some of the blood pressure stuff.
That was awesome. In the gym 6 days a week, is this overtraining?
I would say it depends on the context, right? So I've got another student, for example, he's got a newborn baby. So he's pretty sleep deprived, but I've told him that he's better off doing a 10-minute workout every day, literally just to stimulate a little bit of adrenaline to literally just help him function through the day. And so he's been doing that every day, 7 days a week, 10 minutes. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot. You're like, why would you even do that? More so it's to help him function on like massive sleep deprivation with a newborn. So in his context, he can do that every day, and that's not overtraining because he's just doing a little bit. So the dose makes the poison. So what I would say is that if you're training 6 days a week and you're in there for 90 minutes and you're feeling like your nervous system is strained, you're feeling like you're actually losing energy, then yeah. I would say for the average person, you could probably get away with doing like 4 quality sessions per week. And then between those days, other types of movement. So like walking, rucking, some type of physical activity that's like not breaking your body down. But again, it's based on context. It's based on age. Like if the person's in their 20s, they can definitely get away with more volume, more intensity. Like, where Kevin is, we have to be more mindful of that stuff. Recovery does slow down as you age. You can still obviously optimize recovery, but you can't be training the way you were when you were 20, unless you want to get injured. So I would say it's very context dependent, but if you're not seeing the result that you want and you feel like you're not actually getting more energy, you're losing energy, then yeah, I would say you're probably running the risk of overtraining.
So I've got one last question on the nutrition side of things, because
Yep.
I feel like most people skip it because we are so trained on taste, and
Mm-hmm.
our taste buds are trained on crap. And so we go after the Snicker bars and whatnot, the Cokes, all of that sugar flavored stuff. So one thing I noticed is when we first started to plan that you launched for the DM Alliance, is I went to Trifecta and said, we're going to get these meals prepped, sent to us. This is the easy way. Let's pay and have somebody do it. And they came in and they tasted like shit. I just like maybe a few of them were okay. Yeah. So then we began to kind of go more on, let's buy some groceries and prep ourselves. And I didn't even do a full meal prep. But one of the things that helped me was getting that basic, the rainbow and the starch mm-hmm. and the protein. But you said hop on Instagram, I think is what it was, mm-hmm. and type in, and you had a certain bowl. I'll let you say the names of them. And I never heard those names. And when I was able to pull up those, they're beautifully colored. They taste fantastic. The recipe's right there for you to follow. The ingredients are not hard to find. So give us, because I want this to be super simple for everyone watching to say, here's how I'm going to change my health and build it into a lifestyle. And then I want to transition you into the kind of the gym routine. So tell us a little about that.
Man, that's a great question. And so, they're either called macro bowls. So MARCO, macro bowls. Interchangeably, you can call them poke bowls or poke bowls, however you want to say that, POKE bowls. And then another term for them is Buddha bowls. Like the religious figure. So those 3 terms can be used interchangeably. You can go to Pinterest, you go to Instagram and search that. and like you were saying, Chris, a myriad of recipes, ideas. And the beautiful thing is that it's so simple to make these things. And you can change the condiments or the sauces on them to give yourself some variety. And that's, I think, a really important thing. I would say that, the condiments and the flavor is really important. So I use a sauce it's literally called Bitchin' Sauce. I love it. I think it's great. There are other sauces by like a brand called Chef Hack. So HAK, Chef Hack. The condiments and the flavoring are really important because that's what gives you that sort of satisfaction long term. And I would also say the texture. So if you were just to eat like a boiled chicken breast or boiled piece of tofu, I mean, that just sounds very unappealing. I use an air fryer because basically what I want to do is I want to reduce down the amount of calories I'm cooking with. And so I'll air fry a lot of things. And so between an air fryer for texture and rotating through a set of condiments for flavor, you can create a variety of different meals like this that are really streamlined and user-friendly. I would say, and you were talking about the sugary drinks and stuff, and I just wanted to segue and give another little nugget, is that I found that one of the easiest wins for a lot of people is that if you drink a lot of sweet tea or you drink a lot of sodas, literally just replacing those sodas with Zevia soda waters, so Zevia, Zevia soda waters are way better than your average flavored soda waters, which, to be honest with you, are not very good. Or using water with lemon and just liquid stevia drops, and it's like drinking lemonade. And so straight away, guys, you go from consuming something that's 200, 300, 400, 500 calories. It's going to spike your blood glucose through the roof, give you brain fog, to something that has no calories or very, very few calories and gives you a nice even balance. And so not only are you getting better fat loss, but you're getting better cognition as well, better brain function. And so little things like that, like you don't have to remove things from your life. You just have to find healthier upgrades for things. And when you do that, that's what we've been doing with Kevin a lot, and a lot of my other guys, is like finding upgrades for things. So they're still doing some of the things they like, but it's a healthier version of that thing. And that's how you stick to things long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us about your tell us about the most effective. Kevin was just talking about how he gets in the gym. Mm-hmm. And Kevin, you might have a better question about this, just about the workout routine and how it's been different from your past, and how Frazier can explain to simplify it to our audience.
The workouts the workouts for me that have always been most effective for me are stuff like that: supersets, drop sets, like really getting after it for short periods of time. And I track it to see if I'm increasing weight and stuff like that. So sometimes like everybody wants to switch workouts, and then somebody would give one where there's like 4 minutes in between stuff and you're doing heavy arm curls. Like it just never worked for me. Yeah. Frazier's stuff, like I know when I go in there, I'm going to be done in like 40 minutes.
Which is awesome.
There's no time, even 30, whatever it is. There's no time to like in between. Like there's rest time, but like I'm always moving to the next set. I'm always doing so. I'm not sitting in there texting and anything else. I just get after it. And next thing you know, you're sweating, you're feeling good. And I'm looking forward to those meals when I have, because I always have one right after it. And I never was a guy who was cooking. So it doesn't take long at all. It takes like 10 minutes. It's all part of like my hour. Like, hey, I'm going to go knock this workout for 40 minutes. Yeah. And then I'm going to go right upstairs into my kitchen. And in 20 minutes, I'm going to be eating, cleaned up, everything sinks clean. I'm done. Like that's an hour. Yeah. And it's super effective. That's so much better than, hey, I'm going to like be on the treadmill for an hour and then I don't know what I'm going to eat. I'll just like eat whatever's in my house. This doesn't work.
Yeah, it's funny because I saw a post the other day from an entrepreneur, and he was talking about how he's getting these amazing results in his fitness journey. And he was, saying like a lot of fitness people will say like that you shouldn't be training for 2 or 3 hours a day, but he's been doing that and he's getting really good results and all this type of stuff. And I thought to myself, I'll come back to you in a year and let's see how you're doing. Let's see how you do in a year of training for 2 or 3 hours per day for a year straight. Then we'll assess if you're actually successful with it. And so coming back to the point of minimum effective dose, meaning what are the levers worth pulling when it comes to your training? Same principle with the food. that are going to result in the biggest ROI. And so one of the things that I see a lot of guys do is they'll just like hit the treadmill, or they'll just run a bunch, or like jump on the bike and they'll do a long sort of Peloton session or something like that. And while that's still useful, definitely it's better than nothing, and it's still, helps with cardiovascular system and all that stuff. If your goal is to try and be in and out efficiently and get the best result possible, that's not a very efficient way of doing things. And so I would take that time spent walking on the treadmill or running on the treadmill and reprioritize it to like weightlifting with the biggest muscle groups. And this is something that I shared with Kevin, and it kind of made sense to him early on, whereas I said a lot of guys will avoid training their legs. And one of the most insightful things to realize is that your legs are a big muscle group. And the bigger the muscle group, the more of the caloric burn it will create on your system. And so that's why I train legs 2 or 3 times a week. I do full body stuff, but I'll at least get leg movements in 2 or 3 times a week. And it's the same with your back. Your back is another really big muscle group. So between your back and your legs, you can create a really potent ROI of effort in a very small amount of time, compared to if you were just to like train arms or abs or just do treadmill stuff. So always think about this: larger muscle groups, bigger ROI. Simple, plain and simple. And so if you can do exercises that accommodate for that, that's the types of levers that you want to pull. And you think to yourself, from a efficiency perspective, I would rather Kevin get in and out in 30 to 40 minutes and get a really good result than get that same result and spend 90 minutes. Because then you're losing more time that you have to dedicate to this thing. And then you have to ask yourself, is this something I can truly sustain long term? And for most people, it's probably not. And so it's funny, like the way that I see things in fitness is very sort of relating back to business and investing, about like ROIs and pulling the right levers. And so, one thing that solves multiple problems, because I've seen all the things happening in the space that, all of us are in. And if I take those principles back to health and fitness, you literally can create like an amazing transformation and still be traveling everywhere doing seminars and all the stuff, and do less training and still get a good result. So it's definitely it's multifactorial, but it's definitely something that I think anyone can achieve. Like it's not like you have to be genetically gifted to do this. You just have to have the right processes in place.
Man, it's so the analogy with business is so true. It's like people, if you answered, like my company gets hundreds and hundreds of emails a day. If I just answered emails all day, that would be my job. Like I could consider myself like, wow, I was really busy, but is that really productive? Because like 95% of those emails aren't very hard to answer. So I train virtual assistants on how to answer them. And then I have a key team member who answers the hard ones. And then I only answer the ones that say Kev reply. There's like 2 or 3 a day. That's like the same thing. But if I just answered emails for 5 hours a day and then did 5 hours or 6 hours of my own work, I'd consider myself really busy. But was I really productive? I think it's the same with working out, eating. Like, hey, if I eat these meals and I can do them very effectively, very fast, I work out in 40 minutes, I can get all the results I want. And I don't need all the fluff of everything else. It's really like what we do in business that's effective. So getting into business, Frazier, what's your model of your business? I like your model of your business.
Yeah,
I have
thank
a lot
you.
of Chris, like I'm on the thing with Frazier. I got a lot of ideas for him. I could go. Yeah. I might go to Gatlinburg on my birthday, Frazier, and we can work out. And then I need like an hour of your ear. I got to give you a lot.
So yeah, guys, I mean, I love talking about this stuff as well, because I feel like online consulting can be very lucrative when you have the right model. And so the first thing was, it comes back to one of the things that, Chris had talked about in one of your videos, where, you need to connect with people that have regular touch points with your consumer or your avatar, your client. And so that's why, obviously, beyond just wanting to learn more about business and real estate and get into those vehicles and that type of stuff, that's another reason why I got into a lot of these ecosystems, because that's where the touch points were with my avatar and my ideal person. And so I strategically put myself in those places, one, to learn, obviously, and two, to be of service to those people who need my help. And so that was the first thing. But beyond that, it's the system like Kevin's going through. So it's evolved with time, out of like seeing the blind spots where I was like, okay, this is something that is missing. So I'll do a lot of audio messaging. I find that audio messaging back and forth adds a lot of quick touch points, so you can pivot and adapt very quickly. Because think about this: if you have an appointment with a functional medicine doctor once a month, they'll tell you all these things, and then you go away and you have another 29 days by yourself to try, like, figure everything out, and that's where everyone comes undone. Whereas if you have regular touch points back and forth, you can message me and say, hey, I had this meal, but I'm getting some bloating. What should I do? And so I can help you pivot and essentially navigate the minefield in real time. So the first thing was audio messaging capability. The second thing is, at a certain level, having Facebook groups where you can live stream and show people things. And so if someone is struggling to comprehend a workout, or they need to see how easy a meal prep situation is, like I did a video for Kevin where I literally walked through a 5-minute meal prep solution. And I think when he could see it, it made it more real than if I'm just like saying it or typing it. And so video, audio, and then obviously, you're creating like some type of like system. And I found that between video, audio, and then obviously strategic calls when needed, those touch points, there's so many touch points, it allows you to refine things very quickly. And I feel like the online consulting space, you could take this model of providing a service, having a multi-sensory experience like video, audio, written form, and you could create a consulting model around almost anything. So like anything that you do, any skill that you have, you could use these models and leverage that. And then off the back of that, what I'll do is, for certain individuals, I'll then offer like private day sessions where they'll come out and we'll walk through things in real time with them. And I've had guys come out and they said, dude, like I learned more in like one day with you than, and some of these guys had nutrition degrees at college, learned more with you in one day than I did in 4 years. I mean, obviously that, it's a very humbling experience to hear that, but it's a sort of this ladder. And so, what I plan to do beyond here is create more of like a small group setup. So it's not just so much one-to-one stuff. So what Kevin talks about using VAs, leveraging video content, to repurpose content, that's kind of like what I've done. And one of the things that I found really effective was I did a podcast, and the podcast wasn't so much to like monetize it and try and make money from, ad revenue coming in from the podcast. It was almost like a sales vehicle. And so what I would do is I'd have all these hot topics that I talk about. And when someone reaches out to me, I'm like, okay, this is the perfect podcast episode for them to listen to. Yes. Rather than me like writing out a whole bunch of stuff and like a big long-winded email, I'm saying, go check out this podcast. They go listen to it. It builds rapport with me because they're hearing me. I'm in their in their earphones for 30 to 60 minutes. I drop tons of knowledge and value in there. And so by the end of that episode, they feel like they know me. They trust me. They are like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. So then when they come back to me, they're already pre-sold. And so not only did that really work really well, but I was able to take use websites like Temi.com, so TEMI, Temi, which is a transcriber. And I can take the audio file from the podcast, run it through Temi, gives me like a really accurate transcription. And then I can push that out as email content. I can push it out as, quote pictures, captions, you name it. And so all of a sudden now you're repurposing that audio content in multiple ways. And so just leveraging your time I found to be really, really important. And little things like, taking audio messaging from, typical text messaging over to an app like Voxer. So Voxer is an app I use with the majority of my students. Not everyone uses that, but you can play the audios in 2 or 3 or 4x speed. And so I become like a master at playing audios in 2 or 3, 4x speed. So if someone sends me a 3-minute audio and I'm listening to it in 2x or 3x speed, I can get through that audio in 1 minute. And so I'm all about like, how do you compress down the duration of something and still have a high quality of result. But it's enabled me, like what I do now, pretty much all online, whether it's be like analyzing blood work, creating nutrition protocols, training, interacting with the students. And it's enabled me to be like in New Zealand for 6 months, or in the Smoky Mountains, in the middle of the mountains. Like I could be anywhere and not bound by a physical location, and still generate, multi six figures through the year. So it's definitely a fun journey. There's a lot more that I want to learn. Kevin's obviously going to be very helpful in this area with virtual assistants and stuff, but that's essentially the model, to at least in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I love that, dude, because all I heard was processes and systems and efficiency through that whole conversation. And just like I just sat there and wrote down the Timmy for the transcribing. Yeah.
Everybody should go back on this, and you can listen in on 2x speed. And it really just sound like this. Like you can still understand. I do that on every video.
Yeah. Well, I remember you told me that, Kevin. You said, Chris, go back.
So many like little websites and everything like that. But you created the life that you wanted for you and your family. People don't do that. They buy, but they don't think it through. I did it myself. You have to look at and say, hey, is this going to like lend to the life I want? That's why I pass on so many business opportunities now. Cause I think I'm going to be spending 20 hours a week helping that person. And maybe, or whatever. I don't want to do that. Or I'm going to be all involved in operations. I like my life now. It has to add to it some way or another. Making a little bit more money that's not what my interest is. But last thing, Fraser, I want to talk to you about is it's so important how you got around kind of high level entrepreneurs. And I always tell people this, especially in the service business, your business bank account will be reflective of your client's bank account. If they're living in $2 million homes, you're probably going to be making some good money. In my case, it's like condo associations. They have $1 million budgets. But if you're, in really kind of poor neighborhoods, we all know this instinctively. You're not going to do a lot of new service jobs. But really for like a trainer or something, because you can sell a package, and somebody like me, like you sent it to me, I was like ready to go. But I know that if you sent me that 15 years ago, I'd have been like, nah, I'm going to try to do something else. But I really wanted the full package. Fraser had all these different options. I wanted to go all in. I'm turning 50 and I want to really learn. And I really trusted him because he also was doing it with a friend of mine, Mark Evans. And Mark and I had talked, and he was like, yeah, Fraser's the real deal. And then because you were in the DM Alliance, we have that connection with all these people. I already know like a lot about you by you being in that alliance. I just think that's so underrated. I made a big mistake when I was young of not doing that. It's like automatic. When somebody else is investing in themselves, you want to invest in them as well. You want to invest in their service because you know that they're going to bring it.
Absolutely, man.
That's must have been a big thing for you. And just talk about why. I know you did it to learn, but what's come out of it for you?
Yeah, I mean, what Mark talks about relationship capital. Like to me, I always approach it from, I don't look at someone as a number. I look at them as someone that genuinely needs help. And if I can't help them, can I connect them with someone who can? And if you just come from this place of service, or like what's in it for them rather than what's in it for me, and you just show up with value. One of the things, Chris has probably seen in the DM Alliance, I'll come in and I'll just like constantly be sharing value. And part of it is just from this place of like non-attachment and non-expectation. I've done video reviews for people with their blood work, just shorter ones and stuff, and didn't expect anything in return, just because I know that when I do that often, the fruit comes back to you. And like you said, the power of the network, and when you invest in yourself, like you said, you start to draw people like that in too, who see, hey, this guy is literally spending money on bettering himself. He's living into the thing he's talking about. You can't, like as a coach, I've seen coaches do this where, they're telling people to like, make the decision and take the leap and invest in themselves, but then they don't even have coaches themselves. And it's like, you're not exhibiting the type of behavior that you are trying to tell your people to do. And so even though the words come out of your mouth, there's a disconnect. And so, obviously, like you said, Mark is one of the guys. Tim Bratz is another one. I coach musician Chris Daltrey, and so he's connected me with lots of other, celebrities and well-known people. And so part of it is always just being in this place of service and consciously getting in the right rooms. I mean, Chris, you've talked about this constantly, about getting in the right rooms. Like you were saying, if you are in a space where everyone is just complaining and they're not solution orientated and they're not trying to better themselves, you're not going to have a lot of luck. And so not only getting in the right rooms, and people might say, well, how do I get in the right rooms? Very often, like you pay to be in the mastermind. That's part of the investment. Like that's just part of the deal. And so I would say that a big part of my success has come down to being in those right rooms, investing in myself, and then always just leading with value. Always leading with value, and not cold messaging people, like slimy sales tactics to try and get them to sign up. Like just being a lighthouse and shining the message rather than being a tugboat and trying to pull them into shore forcefully, and just leading from that place. Always leading from that place. Every day I get up and I think to myself, how can I add value to today? And that's it. And just that's the mantra,
That's
I've watched you live that.
Is adding value, and it comes back to you. You don't even think about it. It's kind of like that's really what Chris and I are trying to do here. We're not even worrying about it. We just try to give advice, try to give our experiences, and then we feel it. People like it. People message us about it. It's really cool stuff. But like just getting back to that mastermind or being in that groups, it's kind of like everybody maybe has that one smart friend that you can kind of go to and they give kind of good advice. Maybe you don't have any of them, but all of a sudden you got 17 of them. How could that not change your life? Yeah. But every person then brings you to another person. So I've met Frazier because of Mark Evans, right? Yeah. I met Chris Garrison because of John Crutchfield, and then I met John Crutchfield because of Javier Hinojosa. Like it just keeps going. And the opposite happens when you hang out with not so great people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? Who do they introduce you to? You already know. You hang out with a shady guy. When he brings his friend to the bar, he's shady too.
Yeah. And one of the things also is your ability to connect people. So like I connected one of my students, Larry Hagner, who's the host of the Dad Edge podcast. It's like a huge podcast. He interviews all these famous people. And I connected him with Mark. I put the two together. There was nothing in it for me at all. I was like, Mark's got a really good message. Larry's got the platform, connection. And like, if you just be, sometimes you don't even have to be the guy who solves the problem. You can just be the connector. And that's value in and of itself.
Very.
Absolutely, man. There's so many ways to give value. And you've just dropped a ton of it. Frazier, you've mentioned the fact that you've got a podcast, you've got coaching. We all understand on this platform that coaching is invaluable. I mean, if you're going to make an investment in yourself, make it in yourself by getting a coach for whatever you're trying to better in. So tell us how people can connect to you and hear your voice on different platforms. Yeah.
So obviously you can drop me a message on Facebook, Fraser Bayley, or, at Fraser Bayley on Instagram. If you message me there, I can send you any other links, podcasts and all that stuff. One thing I wanted to say and add value to your tribe here with the Blue Collar Millionaires was, for 5 people, if they want to drop me a message, the first 5, just saying, hey, I don't have blood work yet, but I would love for you to tell me what to get, and then I will review it for you. Or alternatively, if you already have something, I will more than happily review it for you and do a little video walking you through and give you some nuggets and tips. And it's not like a sales pitch. It'll literally just be giving you some value to you. So for the first 5 people who message me and want that, reach out for you guys here in the group, just for being part of this community.
That's incredible. Frazier, put your podcast link and everything in the comments. And
Absolutely,
just to reiterate what he's doing, the first 5 people that reach out to him, he's going to look over your blood work. It's super valuable. And you already know how that's going to go. I had no idea what I was looking at. He broke it down for me, and I was like, I got it. Like, it was so good. I rewatched it a second time. That's so valuable. I really appreciate you doing that.
That's awesome, man.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much, guys.
This has been awesome. We're hitting up to an hour. Frazier, I'll be on
Cool.
the phone with you later. We'll talk.
Cool.
This is great. Thanks for coming on.
All right, guys. Appreciate you. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
That was awesome.